Yeah, so there's been a huge uptick in nearshoring, and data suggests that it's going to continue to increase. I mean, if we look globally at geopolitical instability, trade tensions, and just the reality, for example, of the workforce and the attractiveness of the workforce in Mexico in terms of their age, their skill level, and their bilingual language ability, nearshoring as a trend is really poised to increase.
Welcome to HotSpot by Intugo, a space where ideas, professionals, and enthusiasts converge to address matters relevant to businesses, their growth, and their people. Today, we have Eileen Daspro as our guest, and Eileen is the Faculty Director of International Business in the Canal School of Business of the San Diego University. We're so pleased and excited to have you here. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you, Monica. It's my pleasure.
Eileen, if possible, I'd like to start our show today by you having us tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your professional career.
Yes, I would be pleased to do so. As you mentioned, I'm currently the Faculty Director of International Business at the University of San Diego, where I am in charge of our international business program and also do a lot of outreach with businesses in the region that are interested in expanding abroad. But prior to my current position at the University of San Diego, I was the Director of International Business and Logistics at Tec de Monterrey, which is the largest private university in Mexico. And I worked in Mexico for over 20 years. And so I'm very familiar with the talent landscape in Mexico.
Yeah, and a very good professor, if I might add, because I was lucky enough to have you for a course. And I am very happy to have you here today with us. So, Eileen, in your opinion, what are the primary challenges that U.S. companies are facing today that you think might be driving them to find solutions such as nearshoring strategies?
Yeah, I think companies are facing a couple of key challenges. One is definitely they're looking for a skilled workforce. They're also looking for a workforce that is cost competitive. Companies are definitely on the lookout for geographic proximity and the possibility of doing business in the same, or if not a similar time zone in which they currently operate. They're also looking for the possibility of doing business in a location that is stable and business friendly.
Did you find this interesting? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and activate your notifications. And particularly, so you mentioned, they're looking for talent. And in that regards, what do you feel about the near future, like the upcoming changes? Do you think nearshoring strategies are going to become more relevant? Or do you think it's something that, is just here for a couple of years?
Yeah, so there's been a huge uptick in nearshoring, and data suggests that it's going to continue to increase. I mean, if we look globally at geopolitical instability, trade tensions, and just the reality, for example, of the workforce and the attractiveness of the workforce in Mexico in terms of their age, their skill level, and their bilingual language ability, nearshoring as a trend is really poised to increase.
You had the opportunity to live in Mexico and work in Mexico for many years. So I think you're a very appropriate person to ask this question. What do you believe is a characteristic of the Mexican labor pool that could position it as a potential solution for talent shortages?
Yeah. So they're very highly skilled. They have very strong bilingual language abilities. They have an incredible work ethic, like second to none in terms of their work ethic. And they're extremely collaborative. They know how to work in teams and problem solve.
So, Eileen, in your experience as a professor specifically, and you have been in front of groups that are multicultural, because groups have exchange students, and you had the opportunity to work with integrating teams that not necessarily belong to the same cultural background, right? And as students, I mean, we understood at some point when I was a student that we're being prepared to become part of this labor pool. What do you think is needed for a seamless integration between people that belong to different cultural backgrounds since the classroom and, moving on to a labor context?
Yeah, I mean, what is really necessary is cross-cultural training. Professionals need to be trained to work in multicultural teams, right? Team members from different cultural backgrounds have different work values. They have different communication styles. They have different decision-making protocols, etc. They need to understand their own kind of cultural background and cultural profile in terms of the workplace. They need to be more familiar with that cultural profile of the individuals they're going to be collaborating with, whether it be in person or virtually. And they need to be skilled in strategies to how to bridge those differences and to perform at a high level in a multicultural team.
Have you seen any key industries where nearshoring has been more successful than in others?
Yeah, there's really a wide range of industries that can leverage the benefits of nearshoring. Definitely the automotive industry is a really important example. The electronics industry, the aerospace industry, and manufacturing. There are plenty of examples in IT and tech, software development and tech services, business services, electronics manufacturing, and a lot of really important opportunities also for customer services, telecommunications as well.
So, Eileen, your multicultural background, right? Because living in Mexico for so many years, definitely gives you great knowledge and understanding of what the culture is about. So I think that you certainly have a highly educated opinion on all of these matters. And because you had the opportunity to experience life in Mexico, I'd like to ask what, or if you believe to start with, if there are cultural traits that you think align between Mexico and the US, and what are those cultural traits that you think are relevant?
Yeah, absolutely, Monica. So after, decades of living in Mexico, I was able to identify a couple of different traits that, the two cultures definitely embrace, values that the two cultures definitely embrace and share. I would say the first one is just the importance of relationships and building trust-based relationships. Both US and Mexican culture really value lasting relationships and long-term relationships. I would say another value that Mexicans and individuals from the US also both embrace is they have a really strong work ethic. They're, very dedicated to their work and doing a really great job at their work. I would say a third value that's also really important that the two of them share is they're both really collaborative cultures. They're comfortable working in teams. They enjoy working in teams, and they achieve superior results when working in a collaborative environment.
So, as an international business professional, this next question, I'm sure, is going to be very relevant. How important do you think cultural understanding is when managing a nearshore team?
I think cultural understanding is critical. I think for example, in a call center or in a customer service context, for example, individuals in a nearshoring team have to have a deep understanding of the culture of the customers that they serve, right? They need to understand nuances about their culture. They need to understand nuances about their language in order to truly understand what their needs are, to provide an expedient and satisfactory solution to whatever their concern might be. So it's critical to understanding consumer needs and providing a high quality customer service solution.
So let's say there's a scenario where a company has already been able to establish a nearshore operation, but now they have the challenge, of being able to scale and maintain productivity. So how can U.S. companies ensure that they are maintaining their cultural alignment when scaling their nearshore operation?
Yeah, I would say there are two critical steps that they should follow. The first one is that they should be sure to engage in cross-cultural training. They need to understand their own cultural profile as well as the cultural profile as it relates to work and work practices. In this case of Mexico, where they would be operating. They need to understand where those cultural differences might lie and how they can bridge them. They also need to be, related to cultural value differences in the workplace. They also need to be versed in communication style differences. Are you a more direct communicator? Are you a more of an indirect communicator? Communication style differences can be very relevant, and it's important to understand and have clear expectations in terms of how people communicate information to avoid misunderstandings. It's also important to just be versed in the business practices of the culture. So cross-cultural training is critical, and I'd say the second piece that's equally important is that when choosing a nearshoring partner in Mexico, to look for a nearshoring partner that has deep experience in binational operations and whose leadership team is truly binational and bicultural, right? Because they're the ones that are leading the nearshoring team. And so it's important that that leadership team is both binational, bicultural, and has a deep understanding of both the cultural values, the communication practices, and also the work styles of both countries.
Do you believe there are misconceptions that US companies might have about the Mexican talent pool?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are misconceptions. I've definitely heard, comments that, the fears that maybe the Mexican workforce is low skilled, or, they might not have a strong work ethic, or, maybe their English skills are not up to par. As someone who's spent, half of their life working in Mexico and managing talent and responsible for education, higher education in Mexico, that just can't be farther from the truth. That's just a fallacy. The reality is that, the Mexican workforce, it's a highly skilled workforce. There's a really robust pool of bilingual workers and talent. And they have a very strong work ethic. They're among the hardest working people that I know. So unfortunately, those misconceptions still persist, but they are in fact erroneous.
Well, thank you so much for all of this information, Eileen. Before we part, I'd like to ask a personal question. What did you specifically enjoy about the Mexican culture that made you stay for decades? It's quite a long time. What can you tell us about your experience?
Yeah. So I lived in Mexico for many years, and I have now been back in the States for just a couple of years. And while a couple of years have passed, I still very much miss the people that I met, the relationships that I built, the colleagues that I work with. Are just, really, really made my Mexican experience just really memorable. While I was a foreigner living alone for a good period of time in Mexico on my own, the truth is that I never felt alone because of the quality of people and the relationships that I built during the time that I was there.
So I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to chat with you today. We definitely are lucky to have you sharing some of this information. We're looking forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you so much, Monica. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope that you found this information as valuable as we have. See you next time.